Hey, David.
And we're live.
We are live.
All right. Should we just kick into it?
Sure. So welcome to our session. My name is Sylvain Tremblay. I'm the Executive Vice President at Unifor. I lead the Video AI division. Most likely, like many that are on this call today, a year and a half ago, I sat in your shoes. Been leading large field and virtual sales organization for years. And a year and a half ago, I got an opportunity to go come and build a startup within Unifor. And we created what we call an emotional intelligence platform that allows you to identify, measure, and quantify the impact of EQ on your business, which is going to be a big part of our topic today. So, David, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, with pleasure. So, hello, everybody. My name's David Zeff. I'm the CEO at Whistle. We're an outsourced SDR and sales company supporting about 50 different tech startups around the world. And I'm really excited to talk about this topic because it is very close to my heart. I feel like you can't sell well without some level of EQ and at least the ability to have a conversation with the buyer. So hopefully we can dig deep together here and share some ideas and hopefully get some interaction as well. If there's questions, comments, thoughts from everybody in the audience, just feel free to use that time as you see fit.
Yeah, great point. The more Q&A we're going to get, the more interaction, the better this session is going to be. And what I'm going to do is set the stage. I'm going to start sharing right now. So if lately we've been meeting with analysts, customers, industry leaders, and the topic, we've tried, sales has become a world of analytics. And, today you're an innovator, tomorrow your competitors have all copied you. And if you listen to our customers, there's a lot of noise into the sales space in general. All right. One day you think you've got a brilliant idea. The next day you look at your competitor's website. It's the same thing, the same words, it's just a logo that's different. The old adage of people buy from people. People buy from brand they trust. People don't want to be talked to. They want to have a conversation. All of this has seemed to have gone somewhat to the wayside in today's environment. And it's funny, last week, David, I was talking to a gentleman by the name of Fred Alexander, who's a senior vice president at Sandler. He was talking about sales mastery. Sales mastery is all about, if you look at what they do is the first thing, they have an 8-step sales process. And the first thing they do when you teach sales, and the fundamental of sales is teach sellers how to build rapport, build trust. I am talking to Sherry Levitin, who is a $1 million club speaker. She talks to tens and hundreds of thousands of sellers every year. And she has this big talk track around the skin, the bone, and the heart. You don't sell at the surface. Until you reach the heart of your customers, you've not done your job. So all these things are different ways of talking about the importance of EQ in the sales environment. And you, David, I think have done something that is absolutely fantastic. Traditionally, SDRs were just about acquiring a customer, asking or securing their time. And then it was moved to a seller, an account executive, what we called a qualified lead. You changed the game by bringing video into the mix. So it was no longer a phone conversation, but now you made it real. So I thought that at this point you'd share how this innovation of bringing video has changed the game from an EQ perspective and emotion, how it allows you to connect with your customers more from not just an analytics or rational standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, with pleasure. So, one of the biggest changes I think in the world of SaaS that we're seeing today is the move to what they're calling a product-led growth strategy, which if you're in sales and marketing, you say that with a bit of tongue in cheek. But we like to believe that a good product can kind of sell itself. And, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that many tech buyers are quite savvy. By the time they're, coming to that sales call, I know you'll talk about that even further, but by the time they're coming to that sales call, they sort of know what they want and what they're looking for. and they're able to, especially with a lot of the solutions that are out there, they're able to get a good sense and feel for it, and that's led a whole movement, as we all know, to product-led growth style solutions, where people can try most of the features for free, or for a limited time they can try all the features, and there's all different ways to splice it. And that's led to like a really interesting evolution of the salesperson. And at Whistle, we have different types of clients. Many of our clients are the traditional enterprise SaaS companies that we're booking meetings through outbound or inbound SDR approach. But we have a growing number of product-led growth clients, and normally you would look at that, and if you kind of looked at it face value, you'd think, why do we need sales in the product-led growth element? And I think that when you look at the actual stats of the success rates, if you're measuring commercially, of a free to paid lead across most product-led growth companies, about 80% of those leads don't convert, or at least not by themselves. And over the last 2 years, we've been working with all sorts of different product-led growth companies that where we have to kind of come in, identify those key leads that have potential to kind of switch like a business plan or a higher paying solution, and convert them over. And I can go into detail about that soon. But video is a key part of that, because being able to reach out and give them the option to join you on a video call, it's much more intimate. I mean, nowadays that's how all of us now meet, and over the last 2 years it's become normal. But with video, you can read facial expression, you can read the room. It's nearly, I was going to say, as close as you can get to interpersonal communication. And for us, it's allowed us to add a whole new element to our SDR service, where we're actually converting those leads. We're having an in-depth conversation, really getting that feedback from that free user. Ready, they're not even a prospect at that point. They're an actual user, and then using that information to drive forward some options for them into the sale. And with product-led growth, I think one other thing I'll add here, and why I decided to focus, I guess, my section here on this, is it's what we know from video with enterprise sales, but it's much more intense, because you're probably only going to have one video conversation with a user before they're either sent an activation link or they're disqualified. It's unlikely that you're going to have, maybe you'll have another one like a buying committee, but it's more likely than not that you'll have a quick conversation, outline some pain points, suggest some options, and go from there. And so being able to really hone in and get it very quickly is super important. So Sylvain, I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
it's very interesting, because product-led growth, which in essence you want it as fast as you can, put the product in your customer's hands. What you're saying from that point on, it's like the see, try, buy world that you're in. Customer gets the product, but the fact that now you can have a conversation, which is bi-directional, you can read your customers' emotions and see the confusion and see what's going on in their mind. Your success rate is off the chart once you get, the initial engagement is done, but now in terms of what I call expansion, you're able to expand a lot faster. Fair enough?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say even more than that, even on the deals that we lose, right? The ones where they say, you know what, I'm actually happy with this free plan, or even this basic plan is good enough for me. The amount of emails that we usually see coming back to the company saying, wow, had the most fantastic call, really appreciated that you guys put aside 15 minutes for me. And that leads to them sticking longer, and later on, even upgrading themselves because they feel heard. And I think that's probably one of the most critical things in sales, is actually to let your buyers feel heard. I think most people stepping into sales for the first time, if they hear an objection, they take it as like somebody's pushing them away or personally objecting to them. And it's actually the person who's trying to say, hey, are you listening to me? I'm trying to tell you something. And these are the key things I need you to focus on. So,
And you couldn't have keyed the next slide better, because feeling heard, and I'm going to do a parallel here, and I hope that the people that are on this call are going to laugh a bit. For me, the typical sales call has become something like this. All right. When you're not in a product-led growth environment, you're the typical sales environment. All right. You start the call, you've got the obligatory, like, first 5 minutes. It's pleasant. That's the build rapport that I was talking about. My friend Fred from Sandler was talking about here. This is now the world of sales in a hybrid environment. We're relegated to little segments of 30 minutes. You build rapport, the chit chat in the first 5 minutes. Minutes 6 to 10, you've got this lady at the top there that represents this well. People listen to you, they're engaged. But the seller here, all right, David, what you've done is you've moved away from the slides, like what I call the pitch mode. All right. The seller has gone into, like, at minute 6, has gone into his pitch mode, doesn't see any more of the gallery, sees the green dot, talks to the eye in front of them. And whether the person is showing confusion, you're missing the cues, people could be mowing their grass, going to the restroom, who knows, doing the dishes. There's all sorts of things that people do right now rather than listening to you. And this is the typical pitch environment that we see over and over and over again. And to make it a point, I look at what Gartner says. Just consider this. In the world of hybrid, and this, David, plays right into what you were talking about. Customers in today's environment, they will learn on their own. This is why product-led growth is such a phenomenon right now. Customers don't want to talk to sellers. All right. They will complete 83% of their buying journey. And most, what I call the learning journey, most customers and decisions in the B2B space are made by committees of 8 to 11 people normally on a committee. You're looking at any vendor will have at most 5% of their customers' buying journey to build trust, build rapport, pick up on the subtle cues, identify what truly matters to their customers. How do you do that when the only thing you're doing on those little 30 minutes increment, you're talking to the green dot? That the traditional sales pitch, I have to say, is pretty much gone. And what I love about what you've done, David, with your company is you've shifted the game. All right, it's no longer about a pitch; it's about a conversation. You talked about reading the room, but it doesn't come natural to everybody. So, thoughts, David, on how do you differentiate yourself from that?
Look, I think, you couldn't have nailed it further. Just going, even back to your previous points about that, death by PowerPoint. I put out a post not too long ago, basically sharing that I've managed to survive the last 3 years in sales without using any slides to close any deals. And I do that because, like everybody else, I kind of got into SaaS with these kind of, here's your PowerPoint, and I'm building this epic deck, and I'm used to spend hours perfecting my slides. But even then, I would try and tailor them to who I'm going to speak to. But I looked at sales as theater. I actually thought, going into the start of my SaaS career, I thought that I was a performer, and they were the audience. And if the audience appreciated the performance, they would reward me by buying the contract. And over time, started to realize that it's firstly, I think things shifted. Okay, for sure. And it definitely accelerated in the last few years with all of us landing up remote and virtual and all sorts of stuff. But secondly, I think that the way that buyers appreciate the experience has become a cornerstone of the sales process today, whereas traditional sales focused on your pitch, your killer opening line. I laugh also when I see very often, specifically in the world of SDR, which is the world I live in, it's like, what's your number one cold call opener? There's going to be some sort of amazing way to unravel all this value by just hitting somebody with, an amazing first line. But coming back to building rapport and trust, it's very easy to build it. It's surprisingly quick. It's also surprisingly quick to lose rapport and trust. And I think that in many of the sales that I've done, even in my career, even the long enterprise sales cycles, the 9-month to 12-month cycles, I knew within about halfway of the first call, if I already had a potential customer or partner here, because of the way that I understood what they were looking for, and I was able to respond. And that hook, that lasted the whole 9 months, that we were able to keep coming back to that specific key problem that they were looking to address or goal they were looking to reach. And as long as I stayed on that and helped them see how we could help them, we were going to get there in the end. And I think that, like, when you look at a lot of the advice that's out there today, there is definitely a growing focus around that in terms of understanding the buyer. I'm interested to see with like the growth of all of these different solutions that almost like buy products for you, where that will go and how that will change sales and the role and how dynamic that will get. But absolutely, I mean, from our side, I think that we've had to flip everything on its head, and on the SDR front, for sure. I can show you maybe just an example of some of the key things that we're shifting, at least within the context of PLG, but I'm pretty sure it's applicable across the board. If you want, should I jump into that, Sylvain?
Sure, absolutely. And I just want to come back to what you said.
Yeah.
I did a lot of work with a lady by the name of Jenna Lang from Lang. She's the founder of Lang International. And most sellers today, it's in reference to your opening line for your pitch. Today, like sales, there's a lot of tactics or ways to engage customers, and storytelling is often being used. And if you think about what storytelling is, it's exactly what you said. It's about building that rapport, building a story where you can connect emotionally with your customer. It's not just about the example or the story you're going to use, but the customer can resonate and see themselves in. They understand that their pain, you understand their world. You build that not only rational bonding, but that emotional bonding. And that's the same bonding that's going to trigger a buying decision down the road. Like you said, right off the bat if you connected or if not. So I thought that was very interesting. And you tee it up real well here. Listen first. I absolutely love it. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, just coming back to that point, if you're going to tell, I've got little kids. So and my kids will often ask me, Dad, can you tell us a story, a bedtime story? And before I'm even going to just start, like, I'm already thinking like, all right, pirate ships, and my daughter's going to want a princess at some point. My son's going to want like a sea monster, but they'll already start cueing me. Hey, can you make sure that there's like a monster? And then in the best stories that I can possibly tell my kids are the stories where they've already designed all the main characters in it, and they're constantly like jumping in and giving me their 2 cents. And not that all of my customers or all of our customers are like my kids, but I think there are some crossovers there in that if you're listening first, it's gonna, one of the most simple ways to ensure that you're going to close a deal is to start the conversation by not starting the conversation. Right? Start by prompting that other person to kind of fill you in, right? So, for example, when we're signing on clients for Whistle, the first thing I'll ask them is, how do you find your customers today? And for, our sales calls, usually about 30 minutes each, and 20 minutes of that call are the prospective customer basically answering all sorts of questions and sharing insights about their experience. The last 10 minutes, we'll start the pitch, but now we've got all the ammunition needed to really focus it about them. And everybody, therefore, is going to get a different experience. The same is true with these product-led growth sales that our team are doing. Number one, we'll have a user, right, using a platform. Let's imagine they're a small business, and let's imagine it's a small business, management platform. So number one is just trying to understand, Sylvain, what are you guys doing today? Number two is relying on the data we already have. Like, we might know a lot of key intent points based on their journey so far. Maybe they've started using different features in the platform. I noticed that you're using the invoicing feature. What's that about? Or you've sent a couple of invoices. What's your experience like? And just trying to use that to uncover the pain, uncover the goals, and bridge the gap. And that allows the teams to kind of find that upsell point to say, okay, I get why you're coming our way, because you're trying to make, invoice collection much smoother. And you're a personal trainer. You're sick of, chasing invoices. And I think that whole journey can only really happen when you remove the script. And one of the things that I made an executive decision at the beginning of Q3 was that we are completely removing all phone scripts from every outbound, inbound, PLG, whatever sales conversation. What we have instead is a framework for conversation. And the framework basically relies on firstly asking some sort of permission, right? If they're not expecting your call. If they are and they're joining on a video call, that's different. Secondly, asking open-ended questions initially that can help uncover, the pain, and then slowly directing through questions them down the path that you're, really planning to hold that conversation around. And the same is true with these kind of product-led growth sales. It's just on hyperspeed, right? It's just about tell me a bit about how you're managing your business today, and then you can start to talk about, your business management solution. And I found when I listened to many, many calls, and our team analyzed all the calls from all of our 60 SDRs currently that we have across all sorts of companies, we found that they were so focused on reading their lines, right? Like the actor performing at the theater, that they forgot about the audience, right? And the audience were bored and they were eating popcorn and they were on their phone, right? So I think that's really critical. And now that you don't have that script in front of you, I know you don't have notes for this presentation. I don't have notes for this presentation, because otherwise we're not going to be in the presentation. Once you remove that, you can actually live in it. I know you've got a lot of experience in this area, and I think you've been very humble about, not going into it, but I think it would be really good just to get your take, even from personal experience, having run sales teams. How do you see that whole conversation emerge?
So if you think about it, and whether you're an SDR, whether you're a seasoned B2B seller that's sold on building rapport, building trust, reading the room, there's always a recipe or a formula. And I absolutely love the way you've teed it up, because this is where EQ comes into play. Because when you read a script, you eliminate the spontaneity, the being real, listening with intent. So if you think about emotional intelligence, which is your ability to understand your own emotions, manage and regulate your emotions, and also leverage that, once you do that well, leverage that on how do you use that to build strong relationship, and how do you know and being aware of your own emotions in a social environment, if you start reading body language. So there was a time where we'd go on a sales call, you'd go meet the customers, you'd learn about them during the coffee and all that. But I'll go back to my seller, all right, that comes in on Zoom in the morning or WebEx or Teams, jacked up on caffeine to the point, and then you give them a script on top of it. And then they go into pitch mode, looking at that little green dot that's on their screen. They totally miss, all right? So first of all, they're not aware. So your person is jacked up on caffeine, talking at 100 miles per hour. What about if your customer that morning, building trust is all about, empathy. Empathy is the emotion that is the foundation of trust. So if you're not aware that you're jacked up on caffeine and you're not paying it, how can you manage your emotion and meet your customer on an emotional level? So first basis of building trust, building rapport. If I walk in and you're in a conference room and I see your body language and you're not on your game that day, I'll adjust to where you are emotionally, and I'll read the room, and I'll know when I say something that offends you that there's a cue there. You're kind of gonna get quirky, and it's not the usual. So what research has shown is that a lot of lost opportunities are about those miscues. It's about missing. A lot of people focus a lot of time trying to predict, where using analytics and in various models on how many times you said a word, said a competitor, said this, talk to who. But at the end of the game, it's your ability to connect. I love the way you teed it up. It's just pause. And John Chambers, who's a mentor, would say that all the time. If you listen to customers long enough, they'll tell you what they need. But you got to pay attention. And this is what I think the foundation of EQ. And at this point, and what we've done, and I'll do one slide on product here, which it's just we've all gone to sales calls, even face to face, where I'd be in a room with a seller and I'd come out of the room and the seller would go, "Oh, Slay, this was awesome. We've got this." High five. And I would think to myself, "Oh my gosh, were you in the same meeting that I was in? That meeting was absolutely horrible." So what we've done, and then translate that, these same sellers that couldn't even read the room in person, now they're talking to the green dot. All right. So we created a technology that does exactly help sellers, because the good thing about EQ, it can be taught. You can coach and develop and make people aware of their own emotions, how to control them, how to use them to build relationship. And we've built a tool that allows you in real time. We're on video. We tell you how you engage your audiences. Are they positive, negative? And we do that through video, like from the visual, the tonal, as well as what you say and what is being presented. So we've leveraged AI and machine learning to basically help people be better at it. And so if you're ever interested, it's a technology called Q for Sales. It is not a product-led growth yet, but we're pretty much on our way there. We're probably 75 to 80% of the way there. But you derive value from this technology in less than 5 minutes. So at this point, David, how about we start opening up to the room and see if there's questions out there. Get the audience engaged.
Yeah, with pleasure.
Let's see in the chat room. So teaching high school, which has helped me. Totally agree with Lee San's comment. Go ahead.
Just while we go through and look for some questions there, your point about tone is so critical and matching the pace of your buyer. Even coming back to before I joined the wild world of SaaS, I was a personal trainer for about 6 years, and in that context, in that environment, you're going to get different clients coming in different days with very different moods. And I think that was something that was really critical, because when I started, I found it really exhausting. Many clients would come with a lot of negative emotion into every session. They'd complain before the session, during the session, and post the session, they'd be like, "Okay, see you next week," And that whole point about how you need to kind of be stable in yourself before you can kind of take that on, and so that you can be aware, right? If you're coming in, let's say, right, on 5 shots of espresso before you start your calls, and you're on rapid fire mode, right? And you're just like, I got to hit in all these, meetings before I get lunch, and I don't care what happens next. That's how your buyer's feeling. And if you're able to kind of understand, like, compose yourself and then read the room, I think that makes such a big difference. You mentioned there was a comment that was interesting.
Yeah, Lisa made a comment, but David, I want to come back. So one of the things we found, our early adopters of the technology was listening, and the account executive had 2 deals that were stalled. We always know these deals that are stalled. And at one point, so the technology kind of highlighted, when you talk about what you want to sell to the customer's engagement and sentiment takes a nosedive. But every time you talk about this module 3 here, customers' engagement and sentiment lights up. So why wouldn't you adjust your conversations to module 3? And it's funny where, the technology highlighted where the customer was having the highest engagement, highest sentiment. The account executive shift their focus, and immediately the conversation shifted. And within 10 days, deals were closed. And to the point you're just making, you got to pay attention to the subtlety of the sales. The expert, or the people that did the best, were always the people that were in touch emotionally and rationally with their customers. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, even coming back to your own product, right? Q for Sales. If you were pitching it the wrong way, you would pitch it as like an AI, solution that reads emotions and etc. But if you're pitching it to kind of engage, right? Some of the questions you might ask of sales leaders who are making this decision are, how well do you feel that your sales team read the room? And let's say if your team are remote and you're not in all of those sales calls, what kind of visibility do you think that you currently have on how those calls are going. What kind of feedback mechanism do those teams get in terms of reading the room? Because that scenario that you described, where you might be with a junior seller who's super amped about that call and feels like, yeah, like it's always the first call, by the way. It's always your first sales call that you're 100% closed in your mind, and then it never closes, right? But and that's what that experience of really reading emotion comes to. And that's, I think, what the great salespeople can do is they can sell anything. So coming back even to how your solution kind of plays into that whole space, I think that especially with all the trends, and I don't even know if it's even a trend anymore, right? This whole shift in software sales to remote, it's probably more important now than ever that people have that visibility on where am I at and how to improve.
So, I mean, if you look at the title of our session, how do you win over customers with EQ? We've demonstrated a direct correlation between a seller's ability to engage and specifically the sentiment of customer and their close ratio. If you look at top performers with the top sellers that are in tune with their EQ, it's the same thing. You can pretty much take the top 10 and align them side to side. So in my mind, there's no doubt that the winners of tomorrow, especially in a hybrid environment, not saying that all sales calls will move to a hybrid world, but 70 to 80% of the engagement will be done over this medium. And if you miss the cues, the difference between the winners and losers is going to be between the people that are in tune with EQ as well as the rational, because it's not one or the other, it's both that are going to win the opportunities of tomorrow.
Yeah, totally agree.
Cool.
Cool. Sylvain,
at this point, do we have any questions?
Let's take.
I don't see any questions. So in the meantime, like for us, this was our session. If anyone has questions in the future, or if you want to reach us after this conversation, you've got our contact information. Just use the Rev Genius platform, and we'll be glad to answer to your question after the call. So, David, thank you for joining me this morning. This was a good session.
My pleasure. Thanks, Sylvain. Appreciate the chat. Thanks,
We'll
everybody,
later.
for joining.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.